What's up, everybody? It's your boy Heat Rocks again with another edition of Second Take. And today's topic I wanted to get into was zone defense / abolishing the defensive 3-second rule in the NBA. Now, before we get into that, I want to preface it by saying zone defense was brought into the NBA in the 2003 season, and they implemented zone defense how high school has zone defense, how NCAA has zone defense, but they made a change that to me is a big rule change because it makes the game a little different when playing a zone. They implemented a rule on top of zone defense stating that a defender could not stay in the paint for longer than 3 seconds, or they would be called for a defensive 3-second violation, or aka what I like to call an illegal defense. So prior to having zone defense in the NBA, they used to have man-to-man, and you were allowed to double, but you had to commit 100% to doubling or not doubling. You couldn't go halfway to fake out an offensive player like you were about to double and then go back, or you'd be called for an illegal defense. Now, the NBA thought that they wanted to get rid of the illegal defense and make the game more fluid and have it, the offenses is not as stagnant as prior. But I think what they've done essentially is made the defensive 3 seconds into an illegal defense of some sort, and it's the same thing for me. The other thing that I think that the zone defense has done is take away the big man, because now a lot of times prior to the zone, you weren't able to flood the weak side or the strong side and have isolation plays. You would play almost in a triangle. So if a guy had the ball on the block, you had a guy in the corner and you had a guy on the wing around the 3-point line. They couldn't move per se onto the weak side of the ball, allowing him to have a one-on-one possession, which a lot of people think man-to-man was isolation ball 1-to-1. But the other thing that man-to-man did was you weren't allowed to have 3 offensive players. You weren't able to play a 3-2 offense, essentially. You had to play a 2-3 offense. You had to have 3 guys down on the baseline and 2 guys up on the key, and not vice versa, or it was considered an illegal offense. That's what they called the Michael Jordan rule, because you had to... he was so good one-on-one, they eventually started to call illegal offense. And if you don't believe me, look it up. Illegal offense was an actual call back in the day, in the early 90s, the 80s, all that stuff. But now what you've done with the big man by having a zone defense is you've essentially crowded his space, because everybody can play anywhere without an illegal defense being called, with the exception of a defender who can be called for an illegal defense if he's in the painted area without an offensive player within arm's reach. But what it's done is essentially has eliminated the big man. The 7-footer is pretty much done unless he can do multiple things outside on the wing or from the perimeter, aka slash, aka shoot 3-pointers, things like that. And they've eliminated basically blocks. I was looking at the statistics earlier, and I think the most blocks a team has right now in the 2016-17 season as a team is 6.3 by the Golden State Warriors. We used to have centers who had 4 and 5 by themselves. So we've essentially eliminated the block statistic. We've essentially eliminated the big man who plays back to his basket. We've essentially eliminated the 7-footer. And we've essentially eliminated any type of defense, because right now what happens with offensive players is they get the ball, they drive to the hoop, and every defender has to crash the paint, because if they don't crash the paint, what happens is it's an easy 2-point basket or a dunk, most likely. So everybody scrambles to the paint to close in and block the lane, and then it's pitched out to the 3-point guy for an open 3-pointer. The amount of 3-point shots right now is ridiculous. Teams are averaging 30 and 40 3-point shots a game, which is insane. And you got a lot of people thinking that the athlete of today is better than the athlete of yesterday. And I say that's a bunch of baloney. I think that the NBA has screwed up the league. Every team plays essentially the same. No one is running an offense. It's all high pick and roll, and it's all drive and kick. It's rather boring. In fact, it's probably my third favorite sport right now, when probably in the early 90s it might have been my favorite or my second favorite behind football. It had overtaken baseball for me, but baseball right now I feel is more entertaining to watch. Hard to believe for people, but it is. At least teams have strategies, and each team plays differently according to their strengths and weaknesses, where I feel like basketball, all you need to do is know how to dunk and hit an open three-point shot. There's no defending the three-pointer anymore. In fact, I'd like to see teams stop collapsing and guard all the three-point shooters and just allow guys to go one-on-one, and if they get to the basket and get a layup or a dunk or a foul, hey, so be it. Stop crashing into the paint, and let's make the game a little different than what it is today. When people tell me about how, it was so easy in the 90s to score because everything was one-on-one, it's a bunch of bull, because most teams were averaging 90-something points, and right now most teams are averaging 100-something points. In fact, I think there's only 2 teams currently who are averaging under 100 points scoring. So when people say it was so easy to score back then, it's a bunch of nonsense. Right now, the amount of open three, go watch a basketball game. I challenge anybody to go watch one quarter. Watch one quarter of any basketball game and count the number of three-point shots that are taken, and then count the number of open three-point shots that are taken. It is about 85% of three-pointers that are taken today in today's basketball game are wide open. So if you can hit an open three-point shot, you're going to be very successful. And most professionals can hit an open three-point shot. That's why most people are shooting in the 35 to 40% range, whereas back then that was leading the league. If you were hitting 35, 40%, you were leading the league. If you were over 40%, you were an amazing three-point shooter. Today, everybody's doing it. Why? Because they're wide open. I'd like to know what your thoughts are. Like, subscribe, comment, especially comment. Let me know what you think, and we'll get a nice argument, a nice open dialogue going on what's your take on the defensive 3-second rule, and just zone defense in general. And in 90s, I know this kind of blends into how the 90s go versus how the 2000s go. But let me know. I want to know your thoughts, man. It's your boy Pat. Peace. I'll check you in the next one.